Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Around the Table Sports. So today I wanted to talk about one of the largest college football rivalry games there is. Certainly where I'm from, probably the largest rivalry in all of college football, and of course I'm talking about OU versus Texas, the Red River rivalry. And this year it's going to be interesting for a little bit different reasonings. Usually both these teams are pretty good. There could be a playoff appearance on the other end of this game if the teams are to come out successful in the back half of the schedule. However, this year it's a little bit different. While Texas certainly has somewhat of playoff hopes, I don't know how realistic that is. They've been pretty abysmal to this point in the season. And OU is yet to find a win in conference, and their playoff berth relies on the world freezing over between now and the committee selection period. So I wanted to talk about that, but before we get into that, as always, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy it, and drop a comment down below to let me know what you think. We've just passed 50 subscribers, just about to 60, and y'all, it means the world to me, all the people subscribing. It's just really awesome, and I'd really like to continue the growth on this channel. So with all that being said, let's hop straight into this video. And it's incredibly interesting, the current state of both these programs, because it's a juxtaposition, right? We have the tale of two coaches from the beginning. We have Lincoln Riley at OU, who has categorically overachieved considering where they are in recruiting, and Lincoln Riley seems to be the quarterback wizard. 3 quarterbacks in a row sent to New York for the Heisman Trophy finalist, 2 quarterbacks in a row winning it, 2 quarterbacks in a row first-round draft picks, the third a second-round draft pick, and leaving behind an incredible season at OU. And oh yeah, by the way, all 3 establishing places in the college football playoff, something that Tom Herman and Texas just do not know yet. And certainly the ineptitude at Texas far exceeds Tom Herman. One of the most telling stats I think I've ever been told and ever found is that since 2006, the draft in which Vince Young and all of them departed Texas, since that draft, they have only had 6 first-round draft picks, all of which were on defense. And like I just said, Lincoln Riley already has 2 first-round quarterbacks in his short tenure with OU. Now, we're talking about 14 years versus a short tenure, and already Lincoln Riley might just send that many first-round quarterbacks if he was to coach OU for 14 years, not to mention all the other positions. A super telling stat is since 2009, Alabama and Nick Saban have sent 33 first-round draft picks. That's, 3 years difference from 2006 to 2009, and Texas has almost 1/6 of the first-round draft picks Alabama does in that given time span. And I'm not saying you have to be Alabama, but you're the University of Texas. 6 first-round draft picks in 14 years is unacceptable, and it's exactly why the Brockermeyer twins didn't want to go there. Texas has a development of talent issue. And look, you can point to injuries, this, that, or the other, but if the problem persists for multiple years and you continue doing the same thing, that is the definition of insanity. So either your strength and conditioning program has to go, your talent evaluation program has to go, or your development just has to come to the realization of we are doing these kids a disservice. And Tom Herman could have been on the hot seat this year, and I'm not saying this was a game that was must-win for Tom Herman, but COVID cooled off what could have been a hot seat for Tom Herman. Now, granted, it helps when you get a commitment like Quinn Ewers, who I believe will be the #1 player in his class when it comes time for him to walk on campus. And if he was to walk on campus right now to the University of Texas, he'd be the 2nd highest rated recruit all time, only behind Vince Young, a man who he looks to emulate his legacy. So that's very high praise, and that right there helped cool the seat for Tom Herman. But a disappointing season this year will certainly kindle the flames below that seat, and certainly when you have such an incredible recruit out of Denton Ryan High School, Billy Bowman decommitting from the class, that certainly doesn't lend itself well, because word is right now that he's considering Oklahoma. And I can promise you this, Texas fans, if Oklahoma doesn't come snag him, the University of Alabama could use a cornerback. And hey, I've watched Billy Bowman play corner, and the young man is the real deal at any position he plays. That's a massive, massive loss to the recruiting class. And so while that doesn't, make Tom Herman's seat hot in and of itself, it's the culmination of everything. And so I think Tom Herman is safe until Quinn Ewers gets on campus, but God forbid Quinn Ewers decommits, then his job is just done, flat out done. But, aside from the coaching positions, we have one that's been a little bit disappointing, one that's overachieved. Let's talk about the on-field stuff for just this year, because ESPN has some unique rankings on the defense that I don't necessarily know I agree with, and the NCAA ranking system certainly doesn't agree with it, but we'll break that down. Let's start with offense, because ESPN's offensive ratings to me seem to be much more realistic. They have Texas as the number 6 offense right now. They've scored a ton of points. That's very indicative of the Big 12. Nobody really plays defense, and what little defense there was to be played got killed by the air raid. But let's be honest, there were only a handful of programs within the Big 12 that ever even sniffed at anything like a defense. So your Texases, your TCUs, they used to play defense. OU used to play defense, but they haven't known what that word was in quite some time. OU's ranked as the number 8 offense right now. I can believe that because if I'm not mistaken, Texas has put up more points than Oklahoma. Oklahoma might have had a bit better numbers as far as Spencer Rattler versus Sam Ehlinger, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But then we move over to the defensive side of the ball. And this is where ESPN is a little bit perplexing to me because they have OU ranked as the number 29th defense in the nation. And OU fans, before you get any sort of excited by that, let me burst the bubble. You are nowhere near the 29th best defense in the country. In fact, you're one of the worst defenses in the country in multiple facets, and we'll break that down. They have Texas as the number 49th ranked defense in the country. And to me, there's certainly not a discernible difference between the Texas defense and the Oklahoma defense. The only thing I can come away with is that the one thing the Oklahoma defense has been any sort of good at is getting pressure and sacks at the quarterback. They have 6 sacks throughout this year. Texas only has 2. The other thing I could probably think that it is the fact that Texas has been in higher scoring games than Oklahoma, so they've given up more points than Oklahoma has. However, they've won more games. They haven't lost as much as Oklahoma has. And, you know, when we talk about the defense, I think there are some stats that are very telling. Let's first start with Oklahoma's defense, and when I said they are probably one of the worst. They have 3 defensive backs that Pro Football Focus college grades at a 55 or lower. That's half of your defensive backfield that has failing grades. They can't play DB. Furthermore, they are the 4th worst team in the nation against the pass, allowing 9.7 yards per attempt. That's a first down every time that the other team wants to throw the ball. And that really becomes a big problem when you're talking about a Texas team that has been hyper efficient running the football at almost 6 yards a carry on the ground. And so when you mix a terrible defense for OU plus a mighty efficient running game for Texas and a quarterback for Texas that is just not making mistakes. Sure, you know, when you look at the numbers, Spencer Rattler has more yards than Sam Ehlinger. Spencer Rattler is 10% better on completion percentage as far as 73% as compared to 63%. However, at touchdowns to interception ratio, that's where he's behind Sam Ehlinger. And it's enough to make it count. He has 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions to Ehlinger's 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And, you know, even though the OU defense has been good at generating pressure, Texas's tackles have been phenomenal this year. That's not the problem with the offensive line for Texas. The interior is the problem with the offensive line in Texas. And so OU's got to figure out a way to generate a pass rush from the interior while simultaneously giving contain, because Sam Ehlinger is not afraid to tuck and run. He's a little bit Joe Burrow in the sense that when he sees an opening, he's going to take it. And he's very smart in choosing his times. So that right there doesn't help OU. And certainly the NCAA, when you look at their rankings on teams, they completely disagree that OU is a top 50 defense in the country. In fact, they don't even have them in the top 75 defenses, and neither do I. I don't think anybody should have them in the top 75 defenses. And the last damning stat to OU versus Texas, and this goes to both of them, Texas is the 3rd worst tackling team in the nation, which is a problem. Only if you don't realize that OU is the 2nd worst tackling team in the nation. And misery loves company. Neither of these teams can play defense for anything. But you know what? All of that being said, what do I think is going to happen in the game? Honestly, even though I think OU has a much more intriguing roster, I think that missing Jaden Hasselwood is huge. The receiving core just hasn't been as consistent. The offensive line has been abysmal for OU. The defense has been terrible. The defensive backs are playing blind. I don't know what they're doing. Alex Grinch is a man confused. He seems possessed to have them lose. It's almost impressive how determined he is to put out poor defensive play. Personally, I think he's got to go after this season. OU, you're too close to a natty to except this. That's horrible. And it's going to kill you in recruiting, because it's one thing to be just not good at defense. It's another thing to be outright embarrassing at defense, and that's where OU lands right now. So with all that being said, I think that OU is in for a long game, and I think Texas comes away with the victory. It's going to be interesting to see, and like I said, Texas is theoretically on a playoff berth, but I don't know how realistic that is given how bad they've played this season. So I think Texas wins this game. It should be a good one, and I cannot wait for it. That's going to do it for this video. Comment down below to let me know who you think is going to win the game. That's it. See ya.